One of the things we did in my Bible verses class is we actually had the kids memorize 4 Bible verses throughout that week. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to ask the audience here to do what those kids did and repeat after me these Bible verses. Can you guys do that?
Yeah.
All right, sweet. This was the Monday Bible verse, Psalm 139:14. I will praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, my soul knows it very well. Tuesday, Joel 2:13. Return to the Lord your God, for he is gracious and compassionate, slow to anger and abounding in love, and he relents from sending calamity. Micah 7:7. But as for me, I will look to the Lord. I will wait for the God of my salvation. My God will hear me. And then my favorite, 1 John 4:9. This is how God showed his love among us. He sent his one and only Son into the world that we might live through him. Now, you guys actually don't have to repeat after me. I was actually waiting for you guys to do that, but don't worry about it. So going in, reading all these Bible verses, thinking of plans, doing all these things to make sure that these kids would know the message of our God was crazy. It was fun. It was hilarious sometimes. And halfway through the week, I was going through everything all these kids were. I was getting tired. I was stressing out. I was thinking, what am I doing? What am I doing? Going into Wednesday, I was almost done. And then HT read me a passage that has stayed with me ever since. And let me read it to you now. Ephesians 6, chapter 6, verses 10 through 18. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his great power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can fight against the devil's evil tricks. Our fight is not against people on earth, but against the rulers and authorities and the powers of this world's darkness, against the spiritual powers of evil in the heavenly world. That's why you need to put on God's full armor. Then on the day of evil, you will be able to stand strong, and when you have finished the whole fight, you will be standing. So stand strong with the belt of truth tied around your waist, and the protection of right living on your chest. On your feet wear the good news of peace to help you stand strong. And also use the shield of faith with which you can stop all the burning arrows of the evil one. Accept God's salvation as your helmet and take the sword of the Spirit, which is the sword of God. Pray in the Spirit at all times with all kinds of prayers, asking for everything you need. To do this, you must always be ready and never give up. Always pray for all God's people. Amen? Amen?
Amen.
This was the one verse, the passage that got me through the rest of that week. I prayed about it, I reread it, and believe me, I needed to reread it because it was just that much of an impact. And I believe that the greatest impact was this trip, not on just those kids, but on us. Amen. We have grown, we have changed, we grew up. Going into Astoria, my one goal there was to grow closer to this group because usually I like to be very distant from them. I like to think that I'm not very welcome when that probably isn't even close to the truth. And now I feel like I know most of these kids 10 times better. And I feel like they know me a lot more too. So the Astorian people have asked us to come back next year. Well, I'm happy to go back. And for any of you volunteers that would just love to help out the first week of VBS, come down with us to Astoria. Please do. It's a great, great experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, isn't that great to hear those stories?
Yeah.
It's, God was really doing a great work. And I don't know if you guys knew, but the Bible passage that was on the T-shirts and was the theme of our VBS was 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1. And it said, "Follow me as I follow Christ." Now, if you think about those words, it's pretty big. It's a pretty strong statement. Follow me as I follow Christ. Follow me, right? So, what I want to do is I want to go back a little bit, and we're gonna read from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 23, and then lead into verse 11 through 1. So, and this is the word of God, and it says this: All things are lawful, but not all things are beneficial. All things are lawful, but not all things build up. Do not seek your own advantage, but that of the other. Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any question on the grounds of conscience. For the earth and its fullness are the Lord's. If an unbeliever invites you to a meal and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any question on the ground of conscience. But if someone says to you, "This has been offered in sacrifice," then do not eat it, out of the consideration for the one who informed you, and for the sake of conscience. I mean, the other's conscience, not your own. For why should my liberty be subject to the judgment of someone else's conscience? If I partake with thankfulness, why should I be denounced because of that for which I give thanks? So whatever you eat or drink, or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. Give no offense to Jews or to Greeks or to the church of God, just as I try to please everyone in everything I do, not seeking my own advantage, but that of many, so that they may be saved. Be imitators of me as I am of Christ. Amen. Now, I really believe that the youth really took the part of being imitators of Christ when they were in Astoria. And I believe that they are doing that now. So our challenge is, how do we become like that, right? But there's two things that I want to point out. And the first thing is this, and I believe this passage really talks to us about this, and it's about freedom. And it's about the freedom of having the choice to put others before ourselves. And that's the thing that really sums this up, I believe, and really sums up the Bible in a sense. Now, I know that, we've heard that before, right? We've heard put others before ourselves. We've heard that kind of line before. We've heard that kind of talk. But what Paul really addresses here is a story about in the past before Christ. What Christians had to do. Now, it was about, it's in the passage it talks about killing animals for sacrifice, okay, and eating the meat of that, the sacrificed animal. Now, why did people sacrifice animals in the past, in history? Because, first off, God ordained it, okay? God ordained it, and God said, here, you must sacrifice animals to me. Okay? And God said that. So there's one reason. The other reason was usually a sacrifice of an animal, of a pure, clean animal, meant the cleansing of someone's sins, in a sense. Okay? So the reason why we don't do it anymore is because our sacrifice was given to us by Christ. Now, so that's why generally we don't sacrifice, we don't kill animals and give it up to God in that sense. So here's Christians back in the day. They buy a pure animal, and what happens is they go to the temple and they sacrifice an animal for the Lord. And then what happens to this animal? I mean, it's food, right? It's completely good meat. But then as a Christian, what we did was we weren't supposed to eat that meat that was sacrificed to the Lord. So then here's Paul in this passage, and he says, you know what? If you are invited to an unbeliever's house and you're given food, eat it. Now, why would he tell us that? But then in the same sense, he's saying, if someone is next to you and points out that this has been meat that was been killed for sacrifice, and that we shouldn't eat it, then don't eat it. So here's this, and here's the story, and it's kind of like, really, what's going on here? Well, Chuck Swindoll kind of explains to us in something that maybe would make more sense to us in today's day, I would say. So here's Chuck Swindoll's example. And just picture this, and this is like a late night and we're at a party or something. and you know you have a friend next to you, and you're grabbing some punch, and you smell that there's maybe some alcohol in there or something, right? And you're like, oh, you know, whatever, you know, I'll drink it because it's here at this party. And then you have someone next to you that comes up to you, and he has a punch, but he has the other punch that doesn't have the alcohol, and he comes up to you, and he's a Christian, but he's a new believer, and he's like, yeah, I'm really struggling. I was an alcoholic, and I'm really struggling with that. So then, what do you do? You have this cup with punch. What do? Do you put it down and grab the other one because you know that maybe you drinking that will make the other stumble? See, but the point is this. There's stories about that all the time. We run into situations like that all the time, where our actions can influence others, where our actions can influence others in a good way or in a bad way. But the thing is, what I believe that Paul is really pointing out here, and what I believe that the youth here learned in Astoria, is that we have to really think twice before we act. Because our actions really could influence others in a negative way. So then, Paul goes and he continues on because he knows that when he explains this story, and when he explains it and people are like, what? Why should I think of others before myself? Right? Why should I not eat, you know, if I give thanks, why should I not take it? You know, this was something that I can have. Why should I not do it? So he knew that there was going to be people asking questions. So in verse 29 it says, you know, it says, for why should my liberty be subject to the judgment of someone else's conscience? Why should my freedom be subject to someone else? Right? Because we all live in this country that we're free to do a lot of things. Right? We have that sense of freedom to choose. So why should we choose to do something for others instead of for ourselves? And this is what Paul answers us by. He says, so whatever you eat or drink, or whatever you do everything for the glory of God. Now, when I hear that passage, and I hear that the end part of that passage, do everything for the glory of God, right? You know, it's kind of like one of those, you know, in the movie where the light shines down at you and you're like, and you hear the voice coming down and you're like, do everything for the glory of God, right? And it feels like it has to be something huge. Like, wow, okay, my life, I have to do something that'll change my life forever. Like, it's going to turn it around and it's going to, you know, it's going to impact everyone and everyone around me is going to feel it and everything like that. Well, I don't believe that it's all that. Okay? Because when we hear and read this, so whatever you eat or drink, or whatever